Okay, so in this problem we're going to look at simplifying products of square roots. And this comes up a lot when you're doing various type of geometry problems or just any kind of square root problem. Two quick facts that we need to look at. One, when you're simplifying the square root, you're always looking for perfect squares. You might be looking through perfect squares through prime factorization, or you might be actually trying to factor out perfect squares. But remember that a perfect square can always be represented as a product of a number in itself. So 12 times 12 is a perfect square. And the square root of 12 times 12 is just 12. So that's what we're going to be doing, is we're going to use this multiplication property of square roots to find these pairs of numbers or pairs of factors inside a product. So look at example 1. 14 and times square root of 14 times square root of 56. Well, I don't want to multiply 14 times 56 together and mess around with it as a square root. So instead, I'm going to recognize that 14 and 56 both have a 7 in it. So that gives me one pair of numbers, which the square root of 7 is just 7. And then I've got left over. Well, in this one, I've got a 2 left over, and in this one, I have an 8 left over. And so either you can first see, oh, that's nice, because if I multiply those together, I get 16, and I know the square root of 16 is 4, so my answer was 28. Or you could take one of the 2's from the 8 and pair it with this 2 and realize that you can have basically 4 2's together, which means the square root of 4 2's is just 2 2's, which is 4. So the square root of 14 times 56 is 28. Another way to do this is like example 2. And this is a way where you can get a little clever in that you see this 30, and you see to make 30 from the 15, all you need is a 2. So we steal from the 14 a 2, and we end up with 30 times 7. Well, 30 times 30 is a perfect square, so we take the square root of that perfect square to get 30, and then 7 is a prime number, so we know we can't factor it any further. So the square root of 30 times square root of 15 times square root of 14 is just 30 root 7. Much quicker than multiplying those numbers out, getting some big 4-digit number, and then going back through and trying to take the square root. Example 3 is an even more extreme example, so let's start looking for pairs of numbers. As we're going through, we might see that from these two we can get 2 5's, so that's nice, and then a 2. From these two we can also get 2 5's. We have a 3 left over here, and a 4 left over here. Well, 4 is already a perfect square, so that's nice. This is a perfect square, that's a perfect square, and then this is a perfect square. So the square root of 5 times 5 is 5. Square root of 5 times 5 is 5. Square root of 4 is 2. And then what's left over is 2 times 3, which is 6. And so your answer turns out to be 50 square root of 6.